I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 67th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, where we talk about Star Trek old and new, and tonight we are going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, sharing our thoughts and feelings on it now that the entire 14-episode season has concluded.
Generally, did you season 1 or season 2 as your favorite?
I'm going to consider Season 2 an improvement.
Okay. I think that's probably where I land too, although I did not do the big rewatch like you did. And season 1 has a lot of standout favorite episodes in it, but I think tonally and sort of the balance of single episodes versus meta plot stuff, I think I'd probably end up with a little stronger reaction to season 2 as well.
Yeah, but we're gonna dive into that now that the entire season is in the rearview mirror. We're gonna talk about what we like, what we didn't like. We're also gonna bring up the wish lists that we created
Right.
way back before the season even started at the beginning of the year. And,
It's time to take the tally and see if we got what we wanted.
Yeah, see if it lived up to our hopes and expectations. But before we get into season 2 of Discovery, just have like a little bit of news to talk about. The previously announced Star Trek animated show that will be airing on Nickelodeon has been officially greenlit. And as stated before, we know that the showrunners are going to be Kevin and Dan Hagman. These two, I'm assuming brothers, they have credits on the Lego Movie and the Lego Ninjago movie.
Okay.
And they were also showrunners on Guillermo del Toro's Troll Hunter animated series. Dave, are you familiar at all with Troll Hunters? Because I didn't know about it until this news was first brought up a few months ago.
I have not seen it myself. I have one super fast anecdote to relate. I think I've maybe told you this before. One of my customers at my comic shop that I manage, Rogues Gallery, his kid was super into it, and he has like tattoos on his arms on both arms from Troll Hunters. So that is my main experience, is this guy's tattoos.
Well, when they did say earlier this year that these two guys were in talks to do an animated Star Trek show, I actually watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes of Troll Hunters. There's actually some Star Trek connections in there. The protagonist of the show is voiced by the late Anton Yelchin.
Oh, wow.
He played Chekhov in the Kelvin timeline movies. And one of the troll characters is voiced by Kelsey Grammer.
Oh.
Who played the captain of the USS Bozeman in Star Trek. That's clearly like his most iconic television role that he's ever performed.
Maybe one day he'll stumble into something else.
Yeah. But the Troll Hunters was actually pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of modern children's animation. I first of all, I don't really dig the CGI. I wish everything would go back to like a 2D animated style. That's just what I grew up with. That's like what I'm comfortable with. The stuff from the 80s and 90s.
But I know for a fact that you've liked some of the Star Wars stuff. Clone Wars and maybe more so Rebels?
I liked Rebels more than Clone Wars. Okay. But also like the Troll Hunters story, it's...
So yeah, like how was the writing? What's the vibe?
It's good. I mean, like all kids shows nowadays, it does get like a little too hammy here and there, like just like too many jokes that I think kind of undercut the seriousness of it, but not in a super obnoxious way. I think it would actually be a pretty safe way if the Star Trek animated show maintained a similar tone.
I think probably the Star Wars or the Clone Wars and Rebels are pretty decent touchstones for people. How would you say it compares to
I would say
them?
it's like on the same level as Rebels.
Okay.
Which also annoyed me at times, but not enough to ruin anything.
Right. Just every once in a while, people are a little too flippant, and you're like, take this shit seriously, people.
The reason why I bring up the details of the show is because it does star young teenage characters.
We're talking about, now we're getting back into Star Trek here.
No, I'm talking about Troll Hunters.
Oh, but we will get to Star Trek in a minute.
Yes, because that is what this new Star Trek show is going to do. The official announcement said that it will be a group of lawless teenagers who discover a derelict Starfleet ship and use it to search for adventure, meaning, and salvation.
Just real quick, I'm going to guess it's probably a smaller ship, but it would be kind of hilarious if it's like a Galaxy class.
Oh my god, that is normally occupied by 1,000 people.
Yeah, they're like, how hard can it be? I remember one episode, Dr. Crusher ran the whole thing herself.
Yeah, but...
but that was because they were in a weird closing time bubble thing.
Like, universe, pocket universe bubble thing.
So yes, so like on one level that seems like it could be an obnoxious premise, a bunch of smart-ass kids running a starship. But I could also see how it could come off alright. It seems like give them some interesting character arcs, hopefully put them in some interesting, like, you know, I hope it's not like they're just joyriding. I assume they're going to have some sort of focus, like they were, you know, out trying to scavenge because they're in some section of the galaxy that's in pretty desperate times. They come across this starship and they're like, maybe this is our shot out of here. And they're like, well, you know, but we still need to get out of this section of the galaxy to a more hospitable place. And it sort of follows them trying to do that. Just anything like that that kind of has like clear arcs and isn't just like, ooh, this will be fun. Woo.
Yeah. Our frequent podcast guest, Brian, suggested that perhaps the ship's computer becomes kind of like a mentor to them, and they basically like learn Starfleet values from the ship itself.
Huh. I kind of like that.
So there are some pretty cool possibilities. I'm still not 100% sold on it, but I am very curious, and I can't fault Alex Kurtzman for trying to make a Star Trek show for kids. If you go to any Star Trek conventions for like the last 10 years, probably, like, the fan base is definitely like getting older, and we need some young blood in there.
What's interesting to me is, like, I so think of Star Trek as being somewhat removed from kids' lives that I assume that even like almost all disco fans are like 20 and up.
Yeah, but like both of us got into Star Trek as kids.
Yeah, it's true. But like it was because like my brother got into it, and it was like still, it was more in the pop culture then. I feel like I guess the Abrams movies have kind of pushed it back a little bit, but I guess maybe there's just so much competition now that, you know, where it's like the two poles of sci-fi action adventure in the 80s and 70s and even in the 90s were still Star Wars and Star Trek. Even since then, there's, you know, been Galactica and
Doctor Who has made a huge resurgence.
Who, the little blip that was Babylon 5, but beloved by fans. But yeah, Trek doesn't like occupy the sort of prominent space it once did. So I'm like, will kids even tune into this? Like, will they even care to like try it out? That would be my big question. And I think they've got to have like kind of a badass opening episode, or, you know, some pretty cool stuff like that. I do think that like I want to see him visit some of the familiar places. I want to see him go to a planet that's like got a Gorn settlement on it, or, you know, some of those. We don't even know what era it's going to be, do we?
Yeah, we don't know. This could be like 1,000 years in the future, like Discovery now, right, for all we know.
But I bet more likely it's either TOS or Next Gen.
Yeah, I'm curious or it could be a time period we've never seen before.
Yeah, that's true. For all I know, it's like back in Enterprise era when it's like really like, well, you know, frontiersy out there.
When Starfleet is really new, I don't know how many derelict Starfleet ships are going to be floating around out there, so I think that's the least likely.
I feel like in TOS, though, I did see there were a lot of derelicts.
Yeah, well, that's 100 years after Enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah, but there was a lot of them that came from the past, though. They're always finding
like the Botany Bay.
Yeah, they're always finding some old ship or probe. But yes, I generally agree. Like, but my money, if I had to put money on it, I'm going to say it's either going to be next gen era, or TOS.
I think those are both pretty likely. However, I can see it being further in the future because it being like a derelict Starfleet ship and being like a group of lawless teenagers. It does kind of sound like it might be like at some point in the future where things haven't worked out too well for the Federation.
Yeah.
And the galaxy's become like a little bit more lawless in general, and you have abandoned ships because Starfleet has scaled back or maybe disappeared. I don't know. I think that's also a possibility.
I could see that. I could even see them setting it in the same time period, if not the same locales, as the #Picard show.
I think you have like Patrick Stewart have cameos because he does a lot of voice work.
I mean, that would be kind of cool. It would give the show. It would make it feel more meaningful to fans if he just helped, even if he was just there to kind of kick it off and show up every once in a while.
Jonathan Frakes would definitely do it because he's kind of like the Samuel L. Jackson of Star Trek. Like he'll do anything. Like him and Marina Sirtis, like they loved returning to the franchise. I know eventually one or both of them will show up in the Picard show.
I wonder if there's any possibility that actually there will be a grounding member, like an adult, who will actually be on the ship with the kids. Like Marina Sirtis is the dead mother as Troy to these little hooligans, whipping them into shape and probably doing some cool ass shit herself. I don't know. I'd be down for it if they did it.
So I got an idea.
Okay.
This is like one of those those theories that I generate live as we're recording.
It's exciting.
What if the ship is a mentor to the kids, like Brian suggested, but it actually has the memory files of Data? It's set after Data's death in Star Trek Nemesis, and you have Brent Spiner doing the voice.
Oh man, that's like that's basically like having a computer that teaches them. He's a super well-known voice. I think I like it. I think I would be down with this.
Almost certainly wrong. I just pulled that out of my ass just now.
Yeah.
But it would be cool. And Alex, if you're checking this out, I know Alex Kurtzman probably listens to us based on some things that have happened over the years. So,
like all our fan mail.
So Alex, you can have that one. That one's yours.
That's neat. I normally don't advocate doing things for exposure because it could hurt other professionals, but in this one case, I will allow for it.
But we will definitely be keeping up with what I'm going to call #NickTrek.
Okay.
That's from Dr. Trek. Larry Nemenchek has come up with that. But like we have #Picard Show. Now we have #NickTrek. So we'll report if there's any additional news. I don't think we'll actually see this show until 2021, maybe late 2020. But I think it's going to be at least a year and a half before this is actually on the air. So
I hope the CG is good.
Yeah, I definitely want it to have like a good animation style.
By the way, I'm gonna think of it as West Side Story style because they're hooligans, so I'm gonna call it Trek Side Story. That's where my
lawless. But then it has to be a musical.
I mean, I would honestly be on board that, but
well, that's gonna be interesting if that if that fits into the canon somehow. But
kids love musicals. I'm sure they'd be all over it. Actually, they do like Disney movies, and those are all musicals.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, #NickTrek.
But shall we move on to our to the real reason we've gathered today?
Yes. So Star Trek Discovery Season 2. Dave, I'd like to ask just what were some of the highlights of the season for you? What are the moments that really stood out?
All right, I'm gonna consult my my phone, my pad here, and I think just almost first and foremost in everybody's mind has to be just Pike himself, right? Pike's presence. What's his Ensign Mount?
Yes,
as Christopher Pike. But some of my favorite moments, just kind of as I'm skimming through a few notes I made, the return of the Telosians and Vina was a big one for me. Let's see, Burnham's mom and the very intense kind of interactions between she and between the two of them.
Those performances were so great. And Perpetual Infinity.
Yes, that was Perpetual Infinity. That was the one that had that spotlighted them. Yeah,
Yeah,
among my favorite episodes in there. On the coolness front, from Sound of Thunder, was seeing Saru get to kind of finally get some payback on the Baul and release drop his ganglia, as we like to say.
Yeah, and flex his Kelpian strength.
Yeah, totally. And overall, I actually really like the evolving Spock-Burnham relationship, which I felt like, in a show that sometimes isn't as organic as I'd like to be with their relationships, I actually felt that one developed very organically and nicely. So those were some of my big, just off the top of my head moments.
Yeah, the brother-sister dynamic had a great arc to it.
Mm-hmm.
It ended in a very different place from where it began, and it felt like it got there naturally.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow that evolution.
Spock's, it showed us something we hadn't seen before with a Spock who was kind of really frazzled and on the edge, where we could actually see him. Well,
we have seen that moments in
true.
TOS.
It was a somewhat persistent snippiness, like he was pissed, and like it was like simmering below there. Like we hadn't seen it like for like 2 or 3 episodes. He was kind of like that.
It was similar to how he talked to Dr. McCoy, but like dialed up to 11.
Right, right. And and we actually got to see, what would he would later attribute, like how Burnham grounded him, and we actually saw that process happen over the course of time.
Yeah, and what I love about that is, from what I know about Spock from all the other hundreds of hours of Star Trek that's out there, that is, to me, how I think resentful Spock would come off.
Yeah.
And I do think it's kind of weird in recent years they've made a bigger deal out of the Vulcan characters in Star Trek being a lot more emotional compared to, especially like the original series, where they establish Spock has emotions, but they don't really give you a glimpse of it that often, so it's kind of more special when they show it. But keep it in mind that modern Star Trek does like to make Vulcans a bit more emotional. I was satisfied with the Spock Burnham relationship, and when he shows how much he does love and care about his sister, when he was willing to go with her into the unknown, into the wormhole at the end.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of the things I didn't like, and I'll maybe touch more on it later, but I didn't like them trying to force Culber and Stamets back together after kind of artificially pulling them apart. I felt they were almost artificially put back together. And I knew it was going to end up there. Well, of course, I also knew that Spock was likely to reconcile with Burnham, but I found that journey much more satisfying, and I thought they just, like, the actors did a great job, and the writers did a great job. Maybe a few missteps here and there, but by and large, it was something that I really liked about this season.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go over some of my highlights, and then if you have any more negatives, like the one you were just kind of getting into at the end there with Culber and Stamets,
I have a list. Okay. I have a list.
For me, I think the biggest highlight is this was a much more consistently optimistic year of Star Trek than what we got in season 1.
Yeah.
I think people who dismissed season 1 saying it was like too dark and dreary and dreadful and depressing, if they go back and actually like hang through it the entire season, they get to the end, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can debate the execution of the season finale and how well they pull that off, but I think it is ultimately a positive Star Trek story in the long run. But with season 2, it is a much more consistently optimistic season, even though they still have high stakes, incredible danger, sad moments, but it still is that bright Roddenberry future that
kind of enthusiastic exploration sort of thing. Well, when you think about how the two of them start off, season 1 starts off with a war, season 2 starts off with exploring. So it's just like the keynote address of the first episodes is pretty different.
Yeah, the second season opens with a scientific mystery that does turn into a big, large-scale battle for the fate of the galaxy. But
in that sense, it felt influenced by Trek movies very much. That there's ultimately got to be some kind of big baddie, some showdown, and some shooting. And
I also thought that the writing on the show was more focused. While I still have some issues with it, I felt like season 1 was a little bit of all over the place. With we start off, we're on the Shinjo, then we have this tardigrade monster that goes away, and then we have Harry Mudd show up a couple times, and then we abandon the whole Klingon War to go to the Mirror Universe. Then we come back and wrap up the Klingon War.
Right.
It felt kind of meandering. Whereas Season 2 to me feels more focused. We start on the Red Burst mystery, and it leads to Control. I do think things kind of fall apart.
Even the standalone episodes were all still part of that arc overall.
Yes.
Well, what did you think fell apart, though?
The
tying it together?
The arc with Control, I think, had a bunch of plot holes and some issues that I've brought up last week, and we can get into more of that here in a bit. But overall, I think it was a more focused season. And I think a large part of that just came from a more stable writer's room. There was still some behind-the-scenes drama on there with showrunners getting fired halfway through the season, and that might be why the second half kind of falls apart for me a little bit. Yeah. So hopefully Season 3 we have even more stability and a even more focused third season.
You know, one of the things I liked, even though I have to squint a little bit to make it work, is that those mysteries did, I think, get tied together pretty well in the end, as well as the almost maybe to a fault they tried to answer all the mysteries that have been bugging fans, which is why isn't the Discovery mentioned in other shows, and why isn't the Spore Drive used all the time?
Yeah, but they also contradict a lot of stuff within the season. They make a big deal about how the time travel works like a yo-yo. You can go somewhere and then come back.
Yeah.
But then we see Burnham using the same technology to go to five different points in the past and then go to the future.
Right.
So it's
this is I think I mentioned this when we were talking about the final episode, that it worked for me, I suppose, on the same way that the Lost finale did, which is to say, Lost arguably left any number of sort of open plot threads and had some contradictions in the end, but I felt like it emotionally worked, and that I saw connections and things that I hadn't seen before that kind of brought things together, at least on a surface level, in a sort of nice way. It's also
that's one thing if you have several seasons of a show to drop the ball and stuff like that, but when you're just doing one,
you think it should be tighter.
14 episode season, you should be able to do better than Lost, a show that's notorious for plot holes and unresolved issues.
I guess because I still ultimately like Lost, to me that's not necessarily a criticism. But I think maybe my broader thought about that is that I liked that the season surprised me as I went through it. When it all started with the Red Burst, I didn't know where it was going to head. And, I didn't know that it was going to lead to Control, to seeing Burnham's mom again, to Spock and Burnham having this rise and fall relationship. All of those things were exciting, unexpected sort of things. And that was something I really appreciated about it. I stole it from you for a second, because that popped into my head.
But the only other highlight I was going to mention is just, of course, the familiar elements that they brought back. Most importantly would be Captain Pike, also having Spock on the show, and I was very nervous about having a third. I guess there's been more than 3 actors that play Spock,
but 3 kind of long running or kind of core versions of Spock.
Having such a large interpretation of such a classic character, I was super nervous about that. Ended up really liking Ethan Peck as Spock. Of course, I loved seeing the Enterprise, number 1, all those familiar things, Talos 4. So all of that stuff was a lot of fun. It was kind of the show that I wanted Discovery to be when I heard it was going to be set 10 years before the original series. I did want it to have those connections to the original series. As a big TOS fan myself.
Yeah, it makes it, if you like the shared universe stuff, it makes it feel more official, and it's cool to see that stuff in the same way it is with the Marvel movies, to see the connections between the movies. And I don't know, maybe it makes some fans that are upset about continuity and canon stuff shut up a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Well, some people just like to bitch, but... Yeah. But there are legitimate things to bitch about in Discovery Season 2, which we will get into now. We'll bring up some of our negatives. So what were some of the your big dislikes of the season?
Well, I've got some minor ones, like not enough Tilly. And I understand that there were other characters that were taken over, Pike and Spock primarary, but
yeah, Mary Wiseman was also getting married, so she might have.
I don't care. Yeah. I don't really care about that.
Hashtag silly for Tilly.
Hashtag brokenhearted. And I think that Leland, for instance, wasn't a super notable villain. Not a big issue. There was interesting stuff happening at all times, and interesting threats, but kind of a lightweight villain.
Yeah, I thought Control was a lame villain. As I said last week, we never really get a good explanation for the motivation there. It's as if we're just supposed to assume, oh, super intelligent computer went bad, wants to eradicate organic life.
Right.
And it's not even explained like that. Even if someone had spelled it out, it would still feel so trite and unoriginal and unimaginative that I would be disappointed.
To Terminator, basically, for you?
Yeah, especially when you add in the time travel stuff on top of that.
I think because it was part of a sort of labyrinthine plot, it worked okay for me, because it was something that kind of slowly gave way to, and that they didn't... I guess they didn't frame it often like the Terminator did. It was part of a bigger mystery, and so it didn't bug me too much. But
it was a disappointment for me because the entire season I was hoping for a explanation of Control's motivations.
Yeah.
Then when I never got one in the final episode, I was like, oh, it was just basically this is Skynet.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And that's one of those things, is that sometimes the series kind of pushes things forward, whether it's sort of an emotional, like a character relationship and some emotional payoff that might not feel completely earned, or in this case, a plot point that feels a little bit roughshod. We don't know if it was because of just the writing wasn't quite there, whether it was because of writer's room behind the scenes drama. But for whatever reason, yeah, there's definitely a few dodgy points. I still wondered about, I still felt like I had to work to accept that Georgiou was in the position she was. Really, it really is pretty close to putting Hitler in charge.
Yeah, and we've brought this up several times over the course of the season, that they have kind of softened the character. At the end there, her giggling at Leyland's death screams did kind of remind us of her sinister side.
Yum yum.
Well, that was Non who said that.
Yeah, I know.
That was super weird too.
That was one of my I thought was one of the cheesiest moments.
Yeah, that should be on our negatives list right here. One of our complaints.
Yeah, that yum yum, which I'm gonna use now in a mocking way in general for this podcast. Also, I thought
she said it more sexual.
Yeah, she was like yum yum. Yeah, that's true. I also thought that Saru's sister leading the fighter squadron was a really dopey bit to bring her in.
That actually didn't bother me because I didn't see that coming, and I like surprises.
I didn't see it coming either, but I thought that was a dumb surprise. I'm I would have been happy if she was part of things, but if in the 6 months or that have passed, or a few months,
we don't know how much time. But...
however much it's been, it just. Her becoming a citizen of sort of this broader galactic empire of which she had very little knowledge, and becoming a citizen and sort of or a part of that and embracing it in some way, I think would be interesting. Becoming a fighter pilot that comes in to save him at the end, that's a Star Wars goofy thing. That sounds like something that would Wicked is going to show up.
That might as well have been Poe Dameron
yes.
in an X-Wing.
That's how it felt to me. Anyway, what else? What do you got?
So one thing that just really irks me is that they did try to address some of the big complaints in season 1. They did a wonderful job with some of those. I think they really improved things like the Klingons, making the show a little bit lighter and more optimistic. I was just praising it for.
Yep.
But it's just kind of frustrating when they still do really weird choices that I don't understand, like the way that they handled Section 31. And I'll get more into this later on, but just the way that they took like this really cool idea of like the secret society no one knew about in the public, and they basically like turned them into a CIA type force that operates broadly out in the open. It is so hard to fit that into the continuity, and I know like a lot of people don't care about that, but
arguably they did try and, the final episode was supposed to explain that after the mishaps of Control turning loose and all this, that they were going to rein it in and thus make it presumably become closer, start moving towards the underground thing.
But why was it even necessary to do that in the first place? They could have told the same story with Section 31. I think it actually would have been more effective if they presented Section 31 in the more traditional way that we're used to seeing in Deep Space Nine and on Enterprise. And we know that Section 31 was like that before Discovery. We know that it'll be like that after Discovery.
Weren't they, would you say, I haven't seen it, were they overtly sinister on Deep Space Nine?
Yes.
Now, I think because they wanted to launch a show out of this, and I don't know how far, when they decided to launch a show, but like, they kind of need them to be, at least to have some, I think, basis in like being a force for good.
Yeah, if they are just doing this to set up stuff for the show, I kind of get it. But to me, it still seems like a really bizarre choice. Another really bizarre choice, something I mentioned last week. I'm glad they got rid of the holograms on the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's actually like better ways they could have done it because they don't explain why other ships aren't using holograms.
Right, it just seemed to be Pike's thing.
But okay, cool. I'm glad you addressed that. That bothered a lot of people.
Maybe he talked to every single other captain in Starfleet and said, you should take them off.
I like my idea more of just like the holograms are very unsecure communication, so people stop using it.
Yeah.
You don't want Romulans spying on your communications back to Starfleet HQ. But, okay, get rid of the holograms, awesome. Why are you going to add those weird little R2-D2 robots that we all hated on the Enterprise?
Oh, man.
So it's just like...
Did we talk about that last episode?
Yeah.
Man, those things were dumb. Just dumb, showy technology that they didn't need. It's just... In the same way that we don't need, like... We don't need every scientific thing technobabble explained. I would like, actually, like, probably a little bit more, but we don't need it all technobabbled. We don't need to see the bolts, nuts and bolts of how their repair goes on their ships.
I don't even mind seeing that stuff, but I would like to see
not a cute robot.
Yeah, I don't need like a robot making like beep boop cute noises.
You didn't want BB-8 rolling around on the bridge.
It like looks at the camera and goes like beep beep boo 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 as it like hovers by.
Right. It's like they let like an intern write a scene.
Or like a Star Wars nerd, right? A scene.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So yeah, it's just like it's weird that every time like Discovery fixes something, it seems like it breaks something else.
Yeah,
it's not that bad. I think they probably fixed more than they harmed in this season. I don't
certainly.
I've
seen it mentioned that one of our Twitter respondees mentioned something about like that it was like the best idea they ever had was pushing forward into the far-flung future, which they're doing. And it is true that will free them to operate, to like have completely a blank slate. They could still screw things up by just picking directions I didn't like. Oh, where are the Klingons now? Oh, they picked something dumb. Maybe. But it does mean that they seem to have trouble with continuity and canon stuff a little bit. And it does mean that they're generally free of that issue.
Yeah, and it's more just like how they... Like, the technologies they want to use in this time period that don't, like... It's weird to have holograms. It's weird to have emergency force fields. It's weird to have replicators, even though, like, they call them synthesizers, but they seem to be the same thing as a replicator.
A little weird to have that technology that, like, multiple things that are, like, Transformers technology. Like, their heavy matter grabber, or dark matter grabber, and also their, their hallways between ships.
Yeah.
Nothing horrible about those. They just didn't feel super Trekky, and I think you could have shown off and been showy with the tech in other ways that didn't include these. Like, they didn't really add anything.
Like, what I would love is if they took the TOS technology and found ways to show that off in a cool way to a modern audience.
Like, have a tricorder do more stuff. Like, actually, that I don't know if they ever really did this, like, but like, if they were analyzing some weird organism with a tricorder, and then they're like, here, let me show you, and they hit a button or two, and it projected a hologram, and you would have that haptic interface where you could move it around and do stuff with it while it was, like, in real time. Like, a fancier tricorder, or just a, more showy tricorder, I think that could be cool.
I don't know if I want holograms on my TOS tricorder.
Oh my god, they can do it on a tricorder.
Stuff like that.
But what were you thinking of then?
I mean, in Enterprise, in the season 4 episodes in A Mirror Darkly, where they have for them it was a more advanced future ship, the Defiant from the Tholian Web.
Yep.
Which went into the Mirror Universe, went back in time.
Mm-hmm. Super dope.
And they have the 23rd century phaser used to disintegrate someone, which I think for a long time Star Trek didn't want to have disintegrations because they thought it was kind of a corny special effect to have someone get shot with a phaser and then they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So they at some point in the 90s they decided okay, no more disintegrations, it seems like.
Right.
And they stop showing it. And then when you get to this Enterprise episode in 2005, they showed that as it came off as scary and cool and oh my god, this TOS stuff is so advanced.
Yeah.
These Enterprise time period people in the 22nd century are amazed by this stuff.
Right. It was more a way of re-lensing what some of the stuff we already knew in kind of a cool way. Yeah. When I watched that episode fairly recently, I was like, man, they made the TOS ship seem so cool and threatening that it was awesome. What else you got? Any other notables?
No,
those are the big guns.
Those are, I guess, probably the big gripes I have. Again, I don't want to beat it up too much. I really enjoyed season 2.
How did you feel about, just real quick, about because I touched on this in a previous episode, that science versus faith. We mainly know that was the theme because the writers said before the season started that was going to be a theme. I don't know if I can critique them too much for not engaging with it more deeply. When the show never, the show itself never made a promise about that. That was just what the writers said they were playing with.
I think that was more of a Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harbert's idea when they were showrunners. Mm-hmm. I think after they left, they kind of dropped that. Mm. And I'm glad that they dropped it, because I really don't want to see that explored that much in Star Trek.
It feels like it's hard to explore that. If you're not going to take a side, then it feels limp. And if you are going to take a side, then you're either going to poop on religion, which you and I might be okay with, but it's not going to be...
Star Trek's done it before.
It's done it before, but even that could feel a little ham-fisted.
It's a Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah.
It's a no-win scenario.
Yeah. But I did sort of there were things that I wanted them to explore in a more traditionally Trek, let's talk about moral quandaries kind of way. I've mentioned the Kelpian thing, that even though, yes, it makes sense that the Kelpians were enslaved, so evolving them did make sense, but it did forever change, their culture, and I almost wanted them to just talk about that and wonder, is there anything that they left behind? Being thrust into the galaxy as a relatively, so quickly, was that difficult for them? It's not kind of what the show has done in general. So I don't know if we'll tend to see that, but I do find myself missing it a little bit.
And it would be hard to do that in the 14-episode format that they...
It is true.
That they're going with.
One advantage to a 24 or 26-episode season is that you got that breathing room if you wanted it from back when. Overall, I think I'm glad that they're doing tighter seasons, but yeah, I guess I want, did you feel like they discussed moral quandaries?
Let's see. They deal with the sphere data, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's not really much of a debate going. I think what you're saying is you want a debate.
Yeah.
About what's the right thing to do, and they don't really do that. They're more okay, here's a problem. What can we do to solve it? And we don't actually see conflicting point of views like we would see most notably on the Next Generation, where Worf would be let's blow it the fuck up, and then Dr. Crusher would be no, let's try to do a more passive way to do that, and
Riker would be well, Worf may have a point.
Riker would be well, what if we can get in bed with it? And then Geordi would be what if we build a cool technology to fix it?
Yes.
And then Picard is okay, and he listens to everyone, and then he decides what to do.
Yeah, I kind of want I still sometimes want that. I want to see them struggle with something like that.
To be fair, there are 7 seasons of that with the Next Generation.
And I don't think it was quite what Discovery wants to do. I feel like Discovery is almost like a more elaborate movie in a lot of ways. In a way, sometimes it's got the dumb stuff from the movies when they force a square peg into a round hole to have action and adventure. But it's deeper than that. And of course, it has a more sophisticated plot. But I do feel like it reflects Trek movie style. What do you think?
Yeah, I say it's fair to call the show cinematic, and not only just like its look and execution, but also just the writing and the
they have
themes.
the kind of the big emotional highs and lows that are trademarks of movies, but not of a standalone episode most of the time. Anyway, just something to think about. Do we want to go and look at our wish list and see if we got if Santa brought us what we wanted for Trekmas?
If Santa Kurtzman delivered.
Yes.
So these are just things that we at the time we hoped for in the season. I don't know. Maybe some of these you might be like, oh, actually, I didn't want that. What I got instead is better.
Right.
But, do you wanna go first or should I?
Are we gonna alternate?
Let's just go through one at a time.
Okay, I can go through these pretty quick. My first one, this is counting down to number one, was a non-sinister Starfleet.
Well, you did. Well, I don't know. Did you get that or not?
It's hard for me to say. They backed Section 31 ultimately. I think early on I sort of felt like Cornwell, when she was helping him kind of dismantle it, was a representative of Starfleet who was clearly doing the right thing, but then she felt like almost like a rogue, just like the characters tend to on Star Trek. So I don't know. What do you think?
I would say no, you didn't get that.
Yeah, I think I might not have. Well, yeah, basically I wanted a Trek that doesn't seem like it's made up of like hawks that was trying to do the right thing even if it was struggling at it. And they were sort of like, we want these red bursts investigated at any cost, even if it's using the spore drive. And they were kind of being a little bit of their usual Starfleet selves.
They were also a Starfleet that just came out of the Klingon War, which...
Right. You can actually... It's a pretty safe argument for why they were doing what they were doing.
We were told it was very devastational, even though we never really feel that devastation.
Right. There wasn't like a sad shot panning over dozens of starships floating around in space with bodies around them. I guess they only did that in the first episode of the first season.
Well, we see the Hiawatha wrecked on the asteroid.
That's true.
But other than that, we don't see any consequences of the war, really.
I wanted more of Vice Admiral Cornwell.
You did get that one.
I liked her in the first season. I got her all the way up to her death. Spoiler warning. I think that sometimes that her characterization bounced around a little bit more than I like, and she was went from being a person who seemed kind of morally compromised in the first season, but kind of had some heart to her, and I liked that about her, to being the person who was overtly helping Pike investigate Section 31, willing to sacrifice herself in the end, and it's much more of a team player.
Yeah. I wanted her to be tied to Section 31 because I wanted a little bit more explanation on why she was so eager to genocide a planet to win a war.
Yeah.
And I do think that her death does have a type of redemption quality to it, and I was satisfied with how that ended for her, even though I think the actual contrivance they created was a little lame.
Yeah.
Even when I was rewatching this with my girlfriend, who's not super obsessed with the technology in Star Trek, she's very much a casual fan, I guess. But she even pointed out, do they ever explain why they can't just beam her out of this room? It's obvious to people who are familiar with the trappings of Star Trek that oh yeah, you should be able to beam someone.
Yeah, from one point of the ship.
Unless you establish a reason why you can't.
Right. Yeah, and they had one or two other beaming issues, including arguably the one with Arium.
Yeah. Don't comment and say that would be site-to-site transport either. It wouldn't be. You could take her out of that room and straight into a transporter room on the pad. So.
Yeah, fools.
Because someone's going to be Scotty said, you can't really do site-to-site on a Constitution-class ship, but that's not site-to-site.
Listen to this man. But yes, I think even though they didn't spell it out, that felt something of a logical progression for her. She went from her kind of like hawkish place to trying to redeem herself and be more traditionally Trek heroic, and did that.
You did get more Cornwell.
Yep.
So you're 1-1 right now?
Yep. This next one I definitely got. Advanced hand-to-hand combat.
Yes.
A phrase I was pulling from the 2009 Abrams movie. Absolutely, most notably, it would be Control Leland versus Georgiou in some really spectacular fight in what was that episode?
We saw it in Perpetual Infinity, and then we saw it in Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2.
Yeah. I thought it was a bit of a letdown the second time because I had already sort of seen that, but they were still doing cool flippy stuff.
They did the Inception hallway. So
it was neat. It was neat. I sort of wanted Control, even if he wasn't going to be directly linked to the Borg, to be kind of like the Borg in the sense that you can't do that twice. I think that's kind of cool. But
you wanted him to be able to adapt, like the
I
Borg.
wanted him to be a greater threat. Honestly, I think I would have liked to seen Georgiou really break a sweat and be like, "Oh shit, I am outmatched in this." I want to see her lose her confidence for once, so that we knew how bad things were in that last episode.
I mean, it kind of looked like that, but then at the end, when you see her get on the spore cube, you're like, "Oh, that was her plan." Like she actually wasn't as much of a disadvantage as she made it appear.
Right.
She was trying to just get him into this.
Yeah.
Sport.
That's classic sort of plot structure stuff, which I was fine with overall. I think I honestly wanted to see her even a little bit more on the road.
There's a lot of moments in there where it looks like, oh my god, he's like kicking her ass.
Oh, doesn't? Okay, I've only seen it the one time, and I didn't quite remember that it felt that way. To me, it felt like she was fairly safe, or that's the vibe that I remember from it. We also saw was it Laurel and Ash fighting other like Klingon assassins.
Yeah, in the episode Point of Light.
Mm-hmm. We saw Saru crushing drones. So there was combat throughout this season, some hand to hand.
Yeah, you definitely get that one.
Did I get aliens from Trek's long history? That's my number 7.
This was a thing that I had on my list. I also wanted some classic Trek aliens. So yeah, we had Linus the Saurian.
Right.
We had Non the Barzan.
What's that from?
That was a TNG episode of The Price.
Oh, okay. That's right. Telosians are the big ones.
Yeah, then we have the Telosians. And even though we had Klingons before in Season 1, these are much more traditional Klingons. Mm-hmm. So I would say like we've got like a little bit more classic aliens in the Klingons of Season 2 of Discovery.
Yep. So I'm going to call that a win. Let's see. This was a big one for me. I wanted number 6 for me was the energy of a synergized bridge crew.
Yeah, and before we go into that was something that I phrased it very differently. I said more from the support characters, mm-hmm. and we agreed that
primarily that's the bridge crew.
Yeah, like you kind of have to have both of these things to have either of them.
Yeah.
So
Pike, like when he got on there and he's like, he was like one of his great scenes when he was like, give me your names or whatever. What did he say? Your name?
Yeah, this is like roll call. Like, give me your name. Ranks don't matter.
Yeah, that was
skip the ranks. They don't matter.
It was both a super cool Pike moment and it was a super cool crew moment to like kind of let you, the viewer, know that they're going to be paying a little bit more attention to these people, all of which they did. So Wosakin, Ariam, Detmer, all of those people got more time, even if it was right before they died. So yeah, I feel like that was absolutely fulfilled.
Yeah, and even though like these characters don't have as much spotlight as like your Stamets or Tilly or Saru, mm-hmm. I would say they're handled the same way that like Sulu or Chekhov or Uhura were on the original series.
Yeah, they got some moment. They got plenty of moments.
Yeah.
And little bits that reveal bits about their past sometimes.
I loved like Owasakin being a member of the away team in New Eden.
Yeah.
Something like as simple as that was super cool and it felt very Star Trek.
Yep, and I liked Non working in close conjunction with Burnham in, what was it, the one with the Section 31 base?
Project Daedalus.
Project Daedalus.
I didn't really like Non until that episode, because she always kind of seemed like a little incompetent.
Yeah.
Like she had a panic attack having to pilot that flyer thing in the first episode of the season. And then when she was like trying to keep an eye on Tyler, she's just like sitting at a table across from his in the mess hall, staring at him like it seemed very weird, and I don't know like how effective of a monitor she was.
She became increasingly competent as the season went along.
When we saw her in Project Daedalus, when she's kicking ass, and then when she is the one who pulls the lever to eject Arium.
Yeah, hardcore.
When Michael Burnham like didn't have the guts to do it.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
You know what I bet when you were watching that? I bet you were like, yum yum. Yes, that was a notable scene for her, and
also she's one of the classic Trek aliens that we wanted to see. Well, I don't know how classic Barzans are. They appeared in one episode, but
she's a named alien race from the past. At least. My number 5 is that I wanted better, more memorable music. Maybe not a huge spike in that, but I kind of feel I got it. I got it enough that there's at least a few occasions where I felt obliged to mention it.
I agree. Just this last week, I rewatched the entire season. Mm-hmm. So I've now seen every episode of Star Trek at least 4 times. And
that's every episode in all of Star Trek, not just Disco.
Yes.
Disco you've seen like twice or 3 times. No, you said 4 times.
No, yeah.
Even Disco, that's nuts. You're a crazy person. I'm podcasting with a crazy person.
When I do this, I watch each episode 3 times, and then for this episode, I rewatched all 14.
This man knows his fucking business.
But the music does have some recurring themes that it uses, and seeing all the episodes back to back like that, like I just went through, it is really noticeable, and there are a lot of moments where it stands out. I think it could be better in some areas. It's not as memorable, but there's a lot of places where it is very impactful. And as I'm watching the episode again for like the 4th time, and it's like I know like, okay, the music's about to kick in here, and I'm kind of like playing the music in my head like before it starts. Like I think that's like a sign that like you really like click with the music when you do that. Whenever you're watching like a movie or a TV show you've seen before. And like you're
it becomes part of the tapestry of this characters' lives. The music is as much part of the drama as their acting and the staging of it and all that.
Yeah, and there's like they have like a Klingon theme from season 1. And they kind of turned that into like a lovey-dovey sounding piece of music when Tyler has his last kiss with Burnham. I thought that was a cool way to have some musical continuity. There's like a Spock theme I've mentioned before that they've used several times. There is like this like super like ominous music that plays when they're strapping Burnham into the chair on Esau 4
for their messed up scare her mom into coming to her.
Attempted murder to like make her mom show up.
Yep.
So like the Jeff Russo has done a pretty good job with the music in season 2. I like the music in season 1, and I would say it is even better in season 2.
I wonder if, as they get into the presumably wilder lands of 1,000 years in the future, if that will prompt, even more, kind of like experiments and like, more unusual things for him to score, and where that'll take him. I have no way of knowing, or if it'll kind of still be more of the same. But I'm enthused to hear it. My number 4 is I wanted more standalone episodes, or I wanted some standalone episodes. Season 1 did have a number of them, and I feel like I got them once again.
Most notably, I would say New Eden. It felt like it could be in any Star Trek show.
Yep.
Also, The Sound of Thunder with Saru's Kelpian Revolution.
Yep.
A lot of the episodes.
I feel like there are ones that had a lot of other stuff in there, but if memory serves, the Telosian one functioned effectively as a standalone episode, even though it, of course, moved Spock and Burnham's story along, too.
I think ultimately my favorite episode of the season.
It was great. I had a few vying with it. I even, was it the Sphere episode, the Obol for Charon?
Yeah.
Was also pretty notable. Like, I remember having a few issues with it, but overall, it was pretty standalone, Star Trek-y, let's try and figure out what this alien intelligence wants of us story. So yeah, that's another, I'm going to call that a win. I guess this next one was not. Number 3 for me, I wanted Captain Saru. Did I get that? Bits and pieces?
There are more moments where he's in command here than in season 1, I think. There's a lot of times where like Pike is down on Terra Elysium or on Borath, and so Saru's having to do command decision stuff.
He could even be in the cafeteria watching Culber and Ash have an old fashioned dust up, and he let it fly. It's kind of a command decision.
That entire last episode was Saru's in command of the Discovery.
Yeah. Yeah, he got some great scenes in there where he was all business.
Yeah, so we got to see him like command a battle on the ship, and he seems to be commanding them as they follow Burnham into the unknown future. So
prepare for battle.
So what do you say? You count that as a?
I'm going to count it. I'd also say that it's one of those that, in retrospect, I didn't want as much as I thought because I had no idea Pike was going to be so good. So Pike being kind of the main man throughout most of it is honestly was worth it, I think. But yeah, I think I will say that we got Captain Saru. Maybe not to the degree I wanted, though. Maybe we didn't. I don't know.
Well, did you or didn't you?
No.
Okay. Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer. Is like, because yeah, it was not a big thing in the series. I really wanted to see him making the calls all the time and decisions.
You wanted him to be the captain?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we knew Pike was... Why did you put that on your list?
I don't know. Maybe I didn't think... Like, I thought that... I think at the time that... Did we know from the final episode he was going to take over?
Yeah, we said that. We knew this from...
Not that they were going to be like sister ships or something?
We knew this from like the trailers. Like, we knew this going into the season.
Alright, I don't know why I put it. Maybe I wanted Pike to get to put in his wheelchair.
Put in his wheelchair, well...
but in any case, I feel like I didn't get it.
Okay.
Quite. Number 2, almost there. Planet-side exploration. I didn't think that I had gotten too much of this, but you pointed out some stuff that the New Eden was the obvious one. That was 100% gave me what I was looking for. And then bits and pieces, I think, in some other episodes.
Yeah, also like Talos 4 and Borath for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was Borath?
That's when he has to go into the Klingon monastery,
yeah.
And then he gets down in the caverns to get the time crystal.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. But what do you call it? New Eden was the one was what I kind of meant, which was I wanted to see them poking around on a planet trying to figure out what the deal was with its populace and its what mystery there was to be solved with it. And there wasn't. The other ones tended to be locations, but weren't like planet-side exploration in the TOS or TNG sense. I think I'm still going to count this as a win. There were enough of those, even if it's Burnham going down on the planet where they pull the air out from her or whatever.
Oh yeah, on ESOP 4.
Yeah, but it's just a slight win on that one. And my last one, I think I didn't really get. I wanted a stable couple, like a romantic couple.
You got it at the very end of the last episode,
right?
So
that was only a pledging, really. That was
assuming Stamets survives his injuries. But I think that's probably a safe bet.
It would be messed up if he was just like, yeah, I didn't make it.
On how they backpedaled from Culber's death, I don't think they're going to do that with Stamets.
No, they would not. So yeah, what I wanted to see was a couple that was kind of experiencing the highs and lows of whatever the mysteries and ships were together as a couple. They'd have their ups and downs and all of that stuff. And really, the Culber and Stamets, it was all about will they or won't they get together, almost as if you would if it was like a first date kind of thing. Effectively, it mapped out the same. So I did not get what I was looking for there, and there were no other, I think, really comparable couples to speak of.
Okay. So you got 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Not bad.
Okay, so let's go over my wish list.
All right.
My number 10 was I wanted a new opening credit sequence. And we did get some changes in the opening credits. However, I wanted it to be a more drastic change.
Right.
I often say I think Star Trek Voyager has the best opening credit sequence out of any Star Trek show. I just love those visuals of the ship of Voyager flying around space, flying around stars, flying around rings of a planet.
If they don't do that for next season, when they're jumping ahead 950 years or 1,000 years or whatever it is, then I think they will have really missed the boat. But yeah,
I've given up on this now. I'm just like, well, Discovery's going to have these
variations on a theme.
These opening credits that I don't really care for. I like the that they change it up from season to season.
Yeah.
And even in the middle
but it's
of
almost
season,
like Easter eggs more than it is big changes.
like even in the middle of season 2, they changed like the Red Angel visual we got.
Yep.
After the Sound of Thunder, they showed it as like a mechanical suit and not a more ambiguous angelic figure. But I think the visuals are boring. I don't like that earth tone stuff. I'd rather it be like a ship flying around amongst stars. To me, that's what Star Trek.
Theirs is more
stylized,
almost like a Bond opening, where they're doing like either what would have been like kind of animation back in the day.
Well, no, those
CG.
tend to be exciting. Like these opening credits aren't exciting to me.
You're saying you need more women, like silhouettes of naked women, like launching through space.
Just have like some color or something. To me, it doesn't pop. It's just dull. It comes off as dull and bland.
I actually think there's a fair amount of color to it, but. Those kind of wispy, like it almost looks like it's like architectural drawings kind of forming into life as they form ships.
There's time
costumes.
crystals floating around in there, which is those were in there in season 1.
You know what I want? I want one of those ones that's almost like an old '80s throwback where you see the characters walking around and it freeze frames on them when they're in like some dramatic pose, and it'll be like so and so as Commander Saru. I don't actually want that.
That wouldn't bother me if they did that.
I would, for the right kind of show, I would want it. I could almost see it for, say, Section 31, which is going to have some emulation of like a cop or
I think that's
espionage show.
It's going to be a more serious show, but
anyway. So would you say you didn't get a better?
No.
Okay. What's next?
Next is better ship porn.
Yes.
No, I actually wrote better ship shots, but
we knew what you meant.
Yeah, and I definitely get that. There were some awesome visuals of the ships. They didn't show off the ships as much in season 1 as I would have thought, and when they did, the lighting in season 1 was awkward compared to the rest of Star Trek. It tended to be very dark, and you couldn't really make out all the little details on the ships.
I've probably made this. I'm sure I've made this comparison before, but there's I think they wanted a bit of Bourne Identity style, which is to say it was stylish and you could tell ships were doing cool things, but it wasn't real it was a little bit more cinema verite like Galactica used to be, where the point wasn't always clarity. The point was to simulate this sense of motion and kind of a wildness.
Yeah, but I hate that type of shit in any movie, in any genre.
Yeah, you want clarity of action.
Yes.
Block it out. Show me what you got.
Yeah. Which I did have some frustrations with the big space battle in the last episode. Sometimes it got too chaotic and too busy and too Michael Bay-ish.
Yeah.
At times where it's harder to follow the process of an action.
Right.
It's just too noisy, I guess.
You say compared to something like the fight with the Borg in First Contact or something where it was actually all pretty clear.
Where they didn't try to put hundreds of ships in every shot. But,
right.
But overall, I loved the ship visuals, the Discovery and the Enterprise side by side, the Discovery in New Eden when we see it coming out of that cloud, and
Section 31's ship was pretty dope.
Yeah, and they show off the Section 31 ship pretty well when we see it disengage its holographic camouflage.
Yep.
In point of light, so I definitely got the ship shots that I wanted. So that was definitely a win.
Mm-hmm.
My number 8, we already covered this. I wanted more classic Alien, so that was a win. Number 7, more color.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got this. The Discovery itself is lit better, and I think there's a little bit more color on that ship. But especially when we see the Enterprise and see the colorful TOS style uniforms of the gold, red, and blue. When we see all the colors on the Enterprise bridge. In fact, this kind of generated a new complaint because I like that stuff so much that I wish that is what the interior of the Discovery had looked like all along.
Yeah.
And then they could have had the Enterprise look a little bit closer to TOS style Enterprise.
Right.
But I love the aesthetics that we got on the Enterprise. And the Discovery itself, Pike's office, had more color. It had the warmer colors, and they with the decor in there kind of tied it into his Western roots, or Western is in geographical, not the genre, but he's supposed to be from the Western states of the United States. Mojave, wherever that is.
Right.
I would assume somewhere in where the modern day Mojave Desert is.
Right.
And the science lab that they added in what used to be Lorca's ready room looked really cool. So and I think just like the corridors in that first episode when we see Pike and Non and his science officer from the Enterprise walking down the corridors, I feel like there's just like more color. It's brighter, it's lighter. So I definitely got that. So I'll count that as a win.
Mm-hmm.
And then my number 6, I certainly did not get. I wanted a covert and shady Section 31.
Oh.
I think the example I gave was I didn't want to see guys standing around on the ship out in the open with black badges signifying to everyone that they're in Section 31.
Yeah.
So I didn't get that.
They were shady.
They're shady, but they're not...
They were shady,
not covert.
but public. Yeah. They were...
And I want Section 31 to be bad guys. That's another thing I brought up. Like I wanted them to be villains. I guess like Giorgio's a villain, but
you know what I was thinking? The very first thing we kind of saw them doing in this, there was a lot of bad things that they did, but the first thing we saw them doing, I think, was in fact a good thing. They were helping stabilize the Klingon Empire with L'Rell and Ash and the baby and all that stuff.
Yeah, they to me like they didn't come off as like the villains I knew them from DS9 and Enterprise and even Star Trek Into Darkness.
I think they wanted to make sure that we could be like, okay, we can accept that Ash sees something of value in these guys, because just about everything else that they would be doing for the rest of the season would be shady.
But Alex Kurtzman has said in the Section 31 show they'll explain why Section 31 is different in this time period. But I would prefer we just didn't have to go through this, that we just got the Section 31 I wanted here and now in Discovery, so I'm going to count that as a loss. I did not get that. Moving on to number 5. Again, we already covered this one. I wanted more from the support crew. We tie that into your synergized bridge crew.
Yep, big win for both of us.
Number 4, I wanted change and growth in main characters. So this is a tricky one for me to figure out, because I think we did get that with Burnham.
Yep.
And I think Spock became a main character halfway through the season, and he definitely had some change and growth.
Arguably, although you didn't see him a lot, Saru, he physically changed.
Yeah, so his body went through the change.
Yeah.
And his personality did too. With Stamets and Colbert, they had Colbert started off the season dead, so I guess he changed. But they had them go through an arc where they part ways, but then in the end they kind of hit the reset button. I don't mind that much because I did want to see them back together.
Right, it just felt like they were almost in a way wasting time doing it. It was sort of a preordained conclusion. And there was something, frankly, a little bit weird about everybody from Spock to Cornwell trying to play matchmaker with them. To me, anyway.
I guess.
I don't know. Does anybody super into that plot? I wonder. Out there, does anybody feel moved by it?
I get why it was written the way it was written. Is they wanted to have weight and consequence.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to hit the reset button too quickly. They had to draw it out for a little bit.
But it's like they brought up PTSD over it doesn't. Yes, his was for something nobody in real life has experienced, a resurrection on that level. But PTSD is certainly an understood phenomenon. And, if they had addressed it sort of more seriously, I think I could have been into that.
I wouldn't want them to harp on it too much, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't want it to be drawn out too long and have, a CW will they, won't they.
Right.
I either wanted them to, break up
Unfortunately, they kind of did
together.
do that, I think. Yeah, but there's some other arcs that in the stuff we're talking about. What do you think? Did you get that one?
I guess just because of I guess Burnham, Spock, and Saru pushes that into the win column and not out of the loss column.
Yeah, but it's like one of mine was kind of a close thing.
Yeah, I mean Tilly. I don't know if she changed any. She kind of
Tilly didn't have an arc.
She's the same in episode 14 as she was in episode 1, I think.
Cornwell had an arc.
Yeah, she as. Colbert
went from being to living to dead.
Yeah, the opposite of Colbert.
Yes. So they swapped spots.
Do you think Pike had an arc?
Not really. I loved him, but he was the stalwart. He was the rock.
He is
in a way. I think that's what was almost important to him.
He is changed slightly, I guess, by the knowledge of his inevitable fate.
Yeah.
Um,
Right, but it
his
almost like it
behavior-
galvanizes him to be even more the man he is.
more Pike-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, but you could call that an arc of sorts, but it's
Like there is a change, but like his behavior doesn't change. It's more of like an internal thing.
right.
So yeah, I'll say I got that, I guess. Moving on to the number 3 thing I wanted out of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, simply surprises.
Yeah.
I wanted to be surprised. I wanted to be shaken by reveals that I did not see coming. And I think I did get that. There were several times where the show didn't do what I was expecting. Like I guess the big one would be the reveal of the Red Angel.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Although the first thing that I thought of was like, I suspect you probably didn't think we were going to see Telosians.
No, Alex Kurtzman said at New York Comic Con that they were going to be in the show.
Bastards. Did you think that Pike's final fate would be addressed?
No, I thought that was really cool, and I loved seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
There was also like some surprises at the end. I did not expect that Klingon cleave ship from the Battle of the Binary Stars to show up again.
Yum yum.
And that, like we had talked about how like we had kind of predicted that the Klingon D7s are going to show up, and how like we could see that coming from a light year away.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that cleave ship, so that kind of made that fun, even though we had not.
They got to do like essentially ramming speed kind of thing, and they just plow. They literally did exactly what that ship is named for. And I'm guessing nobody could have thought, oh, I bet they're going to end up in the future.
Yes, I totally thought that they would not actually move the ship into the wormhole, into the future, and have that become the new permanent status quo of the show going into season 3. So that was the hugest surprise.
Also, I don't think any of us expected it to tie into so many of those short treks. What, 3 of the 4?
They said that it was going to tie into that. I think we kind of thought it was going to tie into more of those. Like we thought there was going to be like some Calypso tie-ins, or maybe Harry Mudd.
I still think the Calypso thing will happen, but I guess that will happen next season. I was sort of disappointed that Harry Mudd didn't happen, because I think it would have been fun in their 2-hour thing, but for the finale. But I know that was initially conceived as an hour episode, and that would have been a bit much to ask.
Yeah, there's probably enough characters in there.
Yeah.
And then my number 2, second most important thing that I hoped to see in the season was familiar Captain, old school, just badass Kirk style Captain shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's like one of the biggest gets probably in all of these.
Right off the bat in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
All the way to the very end when we see Pike in that final battle, and then ending with him and his crew on the Enterprise going on their mission of exploration.
So well liked that I can't think of a single person I know who's particularly complained about him. Like almost, and in fact, almost the opposite. Almost everybody I know has really loved him, and there's a petition out there for the show and all this. Like it was a huge
Alex
win.
Kurtzman has acknowledged that he understands that there's this big demand for a Pike show.
Mm-hmm.
And just very recently, Anson Mount and Ethan Peck, they're both at the Calgary Fan Expo, I think is the name of the convention right now, going on in Canada. And they've both at the time of recording, either like today or yesterday, have said that like, yes, we want to come back as these characters again. So
okay, so they've kind of they've formally said they're interested.
At this point, I'm calling it. I don't know if we will get a Pike Enterprise show, or as I'm going to call it from now on, #Pike show.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get that, but I'm going to call it now. We will see these characters again somehow, some way. We'll see Anson Mount in that gold uniform again.
He looks so hot in it. He's a pretty good looking guy. All right, what's your number 1?
My number 1 thing that I wanted to see the most: traditional Trek story concepts told in a new way.
What do you think you got that?
I'm honestly not sure.
This is one of those where like you wanted to see a kind of that sort of standalone plot type stuff, like Darmok told in a modern style.
It didn't even have to be like a standalone type story. Like I don't know. I don't really think we need.
What do you think of as a traditional Trek story?
I mean, yeah, like a story like Darmok, but even like if they had something like that where it was like drawn out over a few episodes, would have been fine. There's like a story that has some type of social commentary that speaks to modern day issues. Star Trek was always intended to be a show set in the future, but it's about today. And
I think when I was talking about how I feel like this sort of series, Discovery feels like in a way like an expanded movie to me. I feel like the movies don't generally kind of address those too deeply, and I think I might say that, at least from my perspective, I don't think you got that. I don't think you quite got that.
Yeah,
I think you got an engaging drama, but I don't think it was a traditional, responding to some sort of societal question story.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to agree with you. The thing
like, because this was no deep exploration of AI or something like
right.
that.
The things that I liked most about Star Trek Discovery Season 2 was the drama side of the stuff. I loved the exhibitions of the characters.
Yeah, in that sense, it felt more influenced by something like Game of Thrones.
As far as on the other side of the coin, you have character on one side, narrative on the other. Stories like we talk about New Eden a lot. It felt like a very traditional Star Trek story. Very well executed, but like not that deep of a narrative. That's something that we discussed, like the meaning of that episode at the end. It feels like they kind of like undercut the value of like logic and truth and science when he lights up the lights in the church. You thought that was kind of weird to.
Yeah, it seemed like kind of an odd thing, something of an odd message for Trek.
and I love like going to Talos 4, but the stuff I liked in that episode was more of just like getting to see the characters past and seeing more of the relationship between Burnham and Spock.
I did like how they updated the Telosians, their clear kind of weird, I don't know if I want to say selfishness, but their kind of inward looking nature, where they had that voyeuristic quality. Yeah. That was an update of the way that they were portrayed originally.
Cool stuff, but I didn't get like a story about that.
Right. It was almost tangential. It was just like, yep, that is who they are.
So I would say like I love the character and drama side of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, but as far as like the narrative side, getting like that traditional Star Trek story that has a deeper meaning to it. I feel like I did not get that.
Yeah, I kind of think so too. So where are you at?
So I think that brings me to, I got 7 out of 10 things on my wish list.
So same here.
Yeah, but we did have 2 overlappers, so that's a total like 18 things we wanted.
Yeah, something like that.
There were 6 things we didn't get, so we got 12 out of 16 on our combined.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
12 out of 18.
Either we're good predictors or they're putting out a show that is pretty close to matching what we want.
Anything that we have not addressed?
So I did make a bunch of notes as I was kind of like skimming through episode listings and stuff like that and reading summaries and stuff. And so I'm just going to quick mention anything else. I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to speed through anything that we haven't gotten around to. Let's see. Okay, here's some small thing that I liked. Klingons speaking English. I think it helped the acting of the people portraying them. We've talked about this briefly before.
Yeah.
I like the connection between Ash and L'Rell, that deepened a bit, and in some ways I almost got a couple, a set couple with them, but I don't think they spend enough time with them to really say it.
One of my favorite moments of the season is when Tyler is watching the Discovery go into the wormhole, and he's sad that Burnham's leaving, and L'Rell's eyes... looking at Tyler, sad that his mind is on Michael Burnham. That was
sad that they're the tail end, right? Yeah, because they had been reconnecting. Is the other thing that's kind of difficult. It went from him saying that when she touched him that it felt like a violation, in like the first episode or something like that.
The third episode.
It was a third. Okay, to the point where they were at least unified over their kid, and so I liked seeing their kind of character growth. I'll be a little bit... Well, I guess we'll see more of that in Section 31, presumably. Unless he never sees her again. I don't think that'll happen. But Anyway, I liked what we did see of him. I liked that when they did that recap that used TOS footage from the cage.
Yes.
So that was the final list of my good things. Let me see if I have any more nitpicks that didn't get mentioned. I thought that Pike sometimes felt like he was bounced around from one big plan to the next without really stopping to think them through. And that would include stuff like Cornwell saying, "Let's go attack Section 31's base," the capture of the Red Angel, or Burnham's plan to blow up the Discovery. Like, he would hear the make the case and he'd be like, "All right, let's do it." It made him seem very can-do and moving forward kind of, but sometimes I was like, maybe you should think about this, Pike. Just ask at least one or two other people, just in case.
The show ain't got time for that. There's only 14 episodes.
Fair enough. Let's see. This hasn't come up at all in this one. I think, in the minority. I never quite fully warmed up to Jet Reno. And I do think that is not... I think most people liked her.
I liked her. The only time that she really bugged me was when I didn't like her saying to Saru, "Get off my ass, sir," because I thought that was so unlikely that someone would say that to their superior officer.
But it seems like her, like she's like had spent some time alone. As weird, because I'm going to defend her now. She'd spent all that time a bit alone. She was already crusty like McCoy was, and they were in a high tension situation. So I don't know. I liked that scene. It didn't particularly bug me.
Well, before we sign off, do you have any thoughts about season 3? Being that we don't really know much except that it's 930 years in the future.
I had some reticence about it before, and I still have it, in the sense that 1,000 years feels like it might feel not like Trek to me. The episode Calypso did indicate things are not like wildly different, not so different that people aren't recognizably people. They're not so far futuristic that they don't speak like normal people.
Yeah, but they don't know what Tuesday is.
Is that right?
Yeah, like when the Zora, the computer, tells them that, "Oh, today is Taco Tuesday," and he says, "What's a Tuesday?"
I mean,
and he does talk weird.
Is he from the Federation?
The Federation's not mentioned. It's like he's from Alcor 4 and he's in a battle with the Vendraish.
I guess arguably I don't even know if he if he was speaking English or standard, what they would call standard.
If that's even the future that Discovery is going to go to, they could say that was going to be that was like another timeline when Control was taking over.
Admittedly, the Disco had the sphere though. It seems. It's got to evolve into that shit.
It's so weird that the ship is abandoned.
Yeah.
And hanging out in a nebula. Like, why are they going to abandon it now?
Oh, I mean, you could contrive anything you want to make that work.
It doesn't. It just. I'm thinking whatever they were thinking with Calypso, whatever that plan was, they didn't follow through with that plan. That it changed somewhere. They can work Calypso back in there if they want to.
I think you're probably right about that. I bet they did change what they were doing. It feels like that. So I cannot even venture a guess as to quite what guess what a 1,000-year in the future Trek will look like. Every single major player on the board, from the Cardassians to the Klingons to the Romulans, is going to be in a wildly different place with different motivations and things like that going on, if they even still exist. I don't want them to screw up the future. It's weird, but like I'm a little nervous. Like, I'm
nervous too.
But I'm worried. Like, if you don't do it right, like if their suggestion for where the Cardassians and the Romulans and Klingons are, if I don't like those things, then that would be a bummer. They have a huge palette to work with, and they could screw up a lot of things.
I think 1,000 years in the future might be too far to move a show into, because we've seen Star Trek characters from the far future before. We've seen characters from the 31st century who are incredibly advanced.
Beings of pure energy.
So not quite, but just like the technology, where like Crewman Daniels can just like project himself through space and time and appear anywhere. So if you're going even further in the future than that, like, how do you deal with that stuff?
I mean, arguably the Discovery will be the equivalent of like somebody, like a caveman walking into like the present day.
Unless they do kind of like a post-apocalyptic thing where like the Federation has fallen, which I'm scared they'll do, because to me that does seem more practical. At the same time, I hate saying that like the Federation is doomed to collapse like that.
Yeah, I bet they won't do that. You know what I think would be interesting is what if this galaxy, what if roughly the galaxy, which was always the main place for Star Trek, has essentially been tamed, and now we've got explorations of other galaxies. Then it's like wildly out of the territory. There's no Delta Quadrant, there's no Alpha and Beta Quadrant. It's completely uncharted territories.
So this primitive 23rd century ship is going to go like it's going to get like refitted with intergalactic,
maybe
transgalactic,
or maybe
technology.
they just wind up in one of those other galaxies or something like that, and just have to work with what they've got.
That all seems weird to me. I get that they didn't want to stay in this time period. That Brian Fuller, when he was developing the show, he was a big TOS fan. He wanted to do a TOS prequel set a decade before that show, so that's what he did. And then after he was fired, the wheels were already turning on that, and they couldn't change lanes. They had to go forward with that. The writers, I think, and they've even admitted to this in interviews and stuff lately, that they felt like their hands have been tied with the continuity. I wish that they would just get like some TOS people, like people who like understand that time period, to work on the show instead of just abandoning it altogether.
Yeah,
and doing this weird 1,000 years later in the future.
But Pike's show, if it comes to pass, will hopefully end up in the hands of people like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I really do almost wish that they had just ended up in Picard's time and they became a sister show to the Picard show somehow.
But you want to... I don't know. I kind of want that show to have full range to do whatever it needs to do.
Sure, and it should, because I don't think that he's going to be like... Well, we don't know, but I don't know if I want him out exploring in a ship. I don't know what it's going to be, if it's going to be...
It's based on the character description information we got. Like, he's not going to be like on a Starfleet ship.
Right.
He's going to be on a bit of a more like ragtag group doing
what?
Like archaeological type stuff.
Oh, really? It's not that you don't think we know they're not going to be doing sort of more ambassadorial type stuff?
No.
Huh. I mean, that could be okay too. I'm down with that. But that sounds very different from Disco.
Disco is going to be very different from Disco now.
Yes, but like, do you think like he could be doing his ragtag archaeology outlaws while Disco is off finding new civilizations?
I mean, they could. I just would have preferred the shows stay separate from each other.
Yeah. Are you afraid that what will happen if like Picard stands next to Saru? Are you going to feel too much of a cognitive dissonance or something?
No, I just
because that's out of continuity, and we always all knew it.
I just want both shows to have like their own freedom to kind of...
You want an identity.
Yeah,
distinct identities. I get that. I think I just disagree, and I think I would have liked to have seen him in Picard's time because it's a more manageable time.
To be fair, but I didn't want them to go to a different time period at all. I wanted them to stay in the 23rd century. Is what I wanted.
Yeah, but
I know a lot of people are really excited to see like this far-flung future.
I would definitely like to hear from listeners and viewers on that. What are their hopes and fears and dreams?
And I hope that they pull it off. I think it's going to be very difficult to create a far-flung 1,000-year later future in Star Trek
that still has that familiarity that you kind of want from Star Trek. That
doesn't betray Star Trek. I think that's going to be a tall order. I hope they can pull it off.
Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts on season 2?
No, I think that's. I think I've said all I have to say on it. Again, overall, really enjoyed it. It had some imperfections, and I guess like the main thing that I want from Star Trek Discovery going forward. There's been moments that I loved in Star Trek Discovery. There's stuff I loved in season 1. There's a lot of stuff in season 2 that I loved. That really balance out with the frustrations I get. The thing that I want from Discovery that I haven't gotten yet is I want to have an episode where I'm just blown away and think, oh my god, that is a great episode of Star Trek. I needed to have a moment like The Next Generation had in Season 2 with Measure of a Man, or the DS9 had in Season 4 with the Traveler.
You want a real high point that's just like, man, this is going to be one of those things against which other episodes are measured.
Yeah. And they haven't gotten there yet. I I hope that they can. Hopefully in season 3, but yeah, I really enjoyed Star Trek Discovery season 2. In fact, I would say I like Star Trek Discovery season 2 better than TNG season 2 as a whole, taken as a whole. Better than Voyager season 2. Better than Enterprise season 2, which is actually my least favorite year of Star Trek ever. So yeah, I mean, I dig it. I'm liking it, and I'm excited to see where they go from here. I hope that season 3's weird future is something that I can enjoy as much as I enjoyed this season.
It'll be interesting when we get to the first teasers and trailers for it to just get some sense.
Yeah, and we'll be covering all of that as the news unfolds. But in the meantime, we will have this Picard show to talk about. And to kind of transition us a bit away from Star Trek Discovery and towards the Star Trek #Picard show talk, we will be back next week to talk about probably the closest thing we have to the Picard show now, at least that time period. That's going to be All Good Things, the Star Trek The Next Generation series finale.
Yeah.
That I don't think Dave has watched that in 25 years. It actually came out in May of 25 years ago in 1994.
I'm really looking forward to this one, to visiting a TNG episode that's of such renown. Yeah. And just revisiting those characters.
It gives us a look at a Picard a couple decades out from The Next Generation. So very similar to what we're going to see in #Picard show. Also, there is a really big movie in theaters right now. The Marvel Studios, I guess, what would you call like Avengers Endgame? It's like the
finale to the franchise finale, or at least of their first initiative.
Yeah, of their first 11 years.
Yeah, and it's like as big an initiative as I've ever seen as part of a movie plan.
That movie borrows a few things from Star Trek.
Yes,
and specifically All Good Things. And the Marvel Studios head honcho Kevin Feige has admitted that he is, in his own words, I think he said, a big ass Star Trek nerd. And he mentioned before that as All Good Things was a really great finale for The Next Generation. He wanted to do something like that with this Avengers movie. And I think there's even a few little not really in the story, but just some there are some ideas that kind of like transfer from All Good Things to Avengers Endgame. So I don't think it's ever been more topical to talk about that episode than right now, as it is has an influence on the biggest movie in the world right now. It's coming up on the 25th anniversary and is similar to the upcoming Star Trek Picard show.
Yeah.
But we are in the I guess like the summer movie season now, and after we talk about All Good Things, me and Dave are going to be talking about Star Trek movies all summer long. We're going to start with the motion picture and work our way to Star Trek Beyond.
Yep, somewhere in there we'll crash into Star Trek V, and we're just going to see what happens.
And we're gonna have several guests join us. We're gonna have some recurring guests that haven't been on Tex-Trek in a very long time. So
yeah, it should be cool.
Anyone who's checking us out, way back when we first got started in 2016, we'll have some old familiar faces return. So you definitely want to keep checking us out. We're gonna try to keep the weekly format up every Sunday, and we got a bunch of Star Trek to talk about with all the shows in development. Star Trek Las Vegas coming up. There's gonna be news from San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con.
So we'll be in the middle of sometimes, or before we discuss these movies, the classic movies, we'll jump in with any big new news, of course.
So we'll have it all covered.
Yep.
And next up will be All Good Things, available on Sunday. So farewell until then, and as always, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.